Iran's nuclear test begins before dawn in the deserts of Natanz. A sudden seismic spike registers on monitoring stations around the world, and within minutes, Tehran's state television interrupts regular programming. The supreme leader appears on screen, announcing in a measured but unmistakable tone that Iran has successfully detonated a 1-kiloton device and is now a declared nuclear power. The world wakes to a new reality. The nuclear genie has been unleashed. As viewers see satellite imagery of the underground test site, the gravity of the moment settles in. This is not a drill, but a dramatic shift in global security. To understand the magnitude of this event, we must look back at Iran's nuclear journey. In the 1950s, under the Shah, Iran embarked on its nuclear path through U.S. Atoms for Peace assistance. After the 1979 revolution, covert enrichment activities came to light, and Iran joined the Nuclear Non Proliferation Treaty as a non-nuclear state. Yet by the mid-2000s, inspections revealed undeclared facilities, triggering a cascade of UN resolutions demanding suspension of enrichment. The 2015 JCPOA offered a temporary reprieve, stringent limits and rigorous inspections in exchange for lifted sanctions. But the U.S. withdrawal in 2018 reignited Tehran's enrichment to near weapons-grade levels. By 2025, its advanced centrifuges in Natanz, Fordow, and new underground bunkers had pushed Iran to the brink of capability, setting the stage for today's flashpoint. When the blast's seismic signature confirmed a nuclear detonation, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, HEAD, stepped before the cameras in protective gear. He explained that all technical steps had been carefully executed and that the world would soon see the strategic benefits of a nuclear-armed Tehran. Analysts compared this swift confirmation to North Korea's playbook: announce fast, test unambiguously, and seize the narrative. In state media, sweeping visuals of the explosion and centrifuge halls underscored the narrative. Iran had joined the elite club of nuclear-armed states. Israel's reaction was immediate and uncompromising. Sirens sounded in military headquarters as the defense forces went on highest alert. In a secure briefing room, senior generals debated options ranging from diplomatic appeals to preemptive strikes on Iran's underground facilities. Publicly, the prime minister vowed never to live under the shadow of a nuclear Iran, reiterating that all means, defensive and offensive, must be weighed to neutralize this existential threat. Within hours, Iron Dome batteries were repositioned around key installations, and warplanes were armed and ready on distant runways. In Washington, the White House called an emergency session of the National Security Council. The president denounced Iran's test as a reckless breach of its international obligations and ordered 2 aircraft carrier strike groups to extend their patrols in the Persian Gulf. Patriot missile batteries were moved into Iraq, and B-2 bombers began repositioning toward the region. Diplomatically, the Secretary of State demanded an urgent UN Security Council meeting, while Treasury prepared new financial sanctions aimed at cutting off every dollar of oil revenue. Energy markets trembled at the prospect of wider conflict, and the administration publicly urged allies to unite in a show of economic force. Moscow and Beijing, meeting in New York's Security Council chamber, struck a cautious tone. Both called for restraint and dialogue, resisting calls for harsh new sanctions. Behind closed doors, Russia saw an opportunity to bolster its regional influence, supplying arms and deepening ties with Tehran, while China, reliant on Iranian oil, quietly negotiated energy deals even as it publicly criticized unilateral measures. Their joint statements, urging a balanced approach, hinted at future vetoes that would weaken the Council's ability to impose decisive measures. In South Asia, Pakistan's foreign ministry issued a statement condemning any external attack on Iran, framing Tehran's move as a sovereign right. Islamabad raised its military alert along the Indian border, subtly signaling that a new regional deterrent alignment was underway. India, equally vigilant, called for calm and diplomatic engagement, mindful of its oil imports from Iran and its defense ties with Israel. New Delhi quietly sought additional security assurances from the United States and prepared air defenses, unwilling to let its own security be overshadowed by a fresh arms race. Turkey, as both a NATO member and a neighbor, walked a diplomatic tightrope. President Erdogan condemned the test as provocative and urged a nuclear-free Middle East, even as Ankara hesitated to degrade its economic ties with Tehran. The Gulf states, led by Saudi Arabia and the UAE, expressed alarm and vowed to accelerate their own defense procurements, inviting Patriot and Thayad batteries to safeguard vital oil infrastructure. Riyadh's leadership warned that if Iran possessed a bomb, the kingdom would feel compelled to develop its own deterrent without delay. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation convened an emergency session in Jeddah, only to fall into familiar factional rifts. Sunni majority members rallied for strong condemnation, accusing Iran of risking regional stability, while allies like Pakistan and Turkey called for measured dialogue, defending Iran's right to peaceful nuclear technology. No consensus emerged, underscoring that sectarian and geopolitical divides run deep, even among Muslim-majority nations. On world markets, oil prices surged into multi-year highs as traders priced in the threat of broader Gulf conflict. Gold, ever the safe haven asset, leapt to record levels. Global stock indices tumbled on fears of inflation and supply shortages, and volatility indexes spiked. Airlines braced for higher fuel costs, and governments warned of renewed inflationary pressures on consumers already suffering from rising energy bills. Back at the UN, the Security Council drafted resolutions condemning Iran's test and threatening new sanctions, only to face resistance from Russia and China. Heated negotiations over language, strong enough to bite yet vague enough to secure abstentions, dragged on. Simultaneously, the IAEA's Emergency Board convened in Vienna, demanding immediate access to Iran's facilities to verify compliance and sample airborne radionuclides. But with access already restricted, inspectors feared they would face fresh obstacles. Military buildups accelerated across the region. The U.S. pushed advanced air defense assets to Gulf partners, while Israel mobilized reserve brigades. Saudi Arabia invited joint drills with American forces, and the UAE linked its radar networks with Israel's. Russia dispatched naval task forces to the eastern Mediterranean and Gulf of Oman under the guise of protecting shipping, subtly countering Western presence. China, too, sent patrol vessels to the Indian Ocean, underscoring that this crisis had drawn all great powers into the Middle East security theater. In the longer term, Iran's bomb shatters the credibility of the Nuclear Non Proliferation Treaty. If a signatory can flout its commitments with impunity, other states will question the value of their own pledges. Saudi Arabia and Turkey have already hinted at their nuclear intentions, and Egypt and Jordan quietly review options. Even Israel might feel compelled to formalize its own arsenal under international safeguards, something it has long resisted. Across the globe, non-nuclear states from Japan to Brazil may see little reason to remain disarmed if great powers cannot enforce the rules. As the dust settles, the world stands at a crossroads. New alliances are forming, a Middle East quad of the US, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and India, a counterblock of Russia, China, and Iran. Energy politics have realigned, with discounted Iranian oil quietly flowing to buyers willing to risk sanctions. International institutions from the UN to the IAEA face their greatest test in decades. And ordinary people brace for higher prices, bigger security concerns, and the chilling prospect of direct confrontation between nuclear-armed neighbors. In the end, Iran's test would do more than make headlines. It would rewrite history. It would expose the fragility of treaties, realign global power structures, and plunge economies and societies into uncertainty. Once the bomb has been tested, there is no turning back. For viewers of Info World, this hypothetical scenario is a stark reminder that nuclear weapons remain the ultimate geopolitical wildcard, and that the world must grapple with their consequences every single day.